Redditors who worked at defunct stores, Blockbuster, Circuit City, etc. When did you realize they were done for? When my boss started loading large TVS into his car and told us to grab what we can. I worked at Circuit City. I sure wish youth that happened at my store. The liquidators were toxic as hell. Made a show out of walking people out the door to set examples. Yeah, I saw the writing on the wall. About a year before they started liquidating Circuit City, they brought back a semi-commission structure based on the margin of your sales, mainly for the TV/home theater section. It was nice being a 19-year-old kid making $20 an hour in 2008. When they started to liquidate, people in my store would hide the stuff they wanted and wait for it to drop down to 80-90% reduced. I remember hiding a non-Kio receiver, a $2,000 Poke speaker system, and Optoma HD projector. They probably retailed for around $4K total. I ended up spending some $400 for all three the second to last week before closing, and never came back. I worked at the Discovery Channel store in a mall around 2007. Had huge 30-40K sales days during the holidays. Then come January, some days were less than $500. I read an article that the then new CEO of Discovery Communications was considering ending retail sales. Found a new job shortly thereafter, and about a month later heard from some co-workers that they were shutting down. It was a fun place to work, and they had a few cool products, but most was overpriced garbage, and certainly not a sustainable business. Walden Books. When one of two registers caught fire, the fire department put it out, but rather than pay to haul it away, the company left it, a hulk of melted plastic, where it was at the checkout. The store closed 2 weeks later. Former Camp USA employee. The speed at which they started changing the slogan increased. They introduced and rescinded a reward/loyalty program inside of 6 months, and they started pushing bait and switch selling tactics in our monthly store meetings. I handed in my resignation the day before they announced the company closing. Worked at a Hollywood video. When there was a solid week with less than 10 customers, I knew it wasn't going to last. Luckily it was just my job for while I was in college. I worked at Babies R Us for 3 years. For part-timers, our hours would fluctuate based on sales from the previous weeks. If we had a bad week, as much as 75% of us would get called off future shifts. It was so random. I could have 10 hours one week and 34 hours the next. It felt like the employees were not the only ones living paycheck to paycheck. I worked in the warehouse at Sears in college until 2007 when I graduated. We were regularly running out of inventory and everything seemed like it had to be ordered in on a case-by-case basis. I was the person in the back that loaded the toolboxes, treadmills, snowblowers, etc. into vehicles. When you're running out constantly of your top revenue generating pieces, something isn't right. Also, they didn't even bother updating inventory. I had a friend there that walked off with a couple of big screens and nobody ever even noticed. I worked at Blockbuster. I was there when they started Blockbuster Total Access to compete with Netflix. You add movies to your account. They mail the DVDs to you. You can return the DVDs to any Blockbuster as soon as they scan them and you'll get the next movies on your list sent out, so you didn't have to wait as long for turnaround. Even better, you were able to rent a movie at the Blockbuster for free that you turned it in at. It was actually a great service. You could get tons of movies, and it was really easy to get people interested in signing up for it. Foot traffic in stores increases. The amount of candy and snacks we sold increased. We even had an uptick in paid movie rentals for non-new releases, cause parents would exchange their movie for a new release and get a couple for the kids as well. Then they started to change it. Restricted the amount of movies you can exchange each month. Different plans had different restrictions on what movies you could get, how many new releases, etc. It became really difficult to explain to customers because there were so many restrictions in place. After a bit you couldn't exchange a movie in store at all. Foot traffic died again, and the chain along with it. I worked for Borders from 2000 to 2008. When I was laid off, I was working what had originally been 3 job descriptions. They decided to eliminate that position too and dump all the work on my already overworked boss. called it restructuring and other corporate weasel words, but I could see the ship was sinking. Still miss that place. Worked at Best Buy for a while, got fired and then went to work at Circuit City. I knew it the second I walked into that store. 6 months later we were told it was closing. Best Buy constantly updated fixtures and layouts/designs. Everything was bright and new. I imagine that Circuit City looked exactly like it did when it first opened. Can confirm. My dad has always been super loyal to good salespeople, and he met Steve shortly after I was born when he went to surprise my mom with a new TV, told him about my birth. Steve slapped his employee discount on the transaction as a congratulations, and that was that. Steve was our appliance/electronics guy. He called my dad in '91 when the first Circuit City opened in my city to let him know he'd moved and suggested we come out to the grand opening. I remember it because they had free popcorn and hot dogs, and I got the running pad for my Nintendo. The store was exactly the same minus the appliances. When Steve called us to let us know he'd stashed some 80% off home theater equipment for us when they closed down. I worked for a Kmart in the early 2000s when the chain was starting to die a long slow death. This location was a total shit show. The store itself was dirty in a new and renovated and outdated sort of way. My first day of death, I saw a bulletin about how a secret shopper had asked an associate for help and he told her to F off. Training was a joke and it was super easy to swap ups, so goods could be purchased for other prices as long as the prices weren't too high. Not that the dullard cashiers would have noticed. By far the worst area in the store was the warehouse. There was never enough item stock when there was a blue light sale and customers got pissed. But other than that, items were incredibly overstocked because Kmart didn't give a shoot. There were huge boxes blocking the warehouse aisles, so I literally had to climb over piles of haphazardly stacked stuff. I quit that job after I decided that I wasn't going to break my neck for minimum wage. The only amusing thing about this job was that Pokémon had started to become wildly popular in the United States, and Kmart had these little Pokémon plushes kind of like Beanie Babies that were just kept on bins in shelves. So of course these things ended up all over the store due to little kids. I did cleaning and store tidying tasks, so I really did have to catch back them all. Edit. I reread my comment and realize that I have the word death in where I should have had work. I don't know how it happened, but that shoot is hilarious, so it's staying in. I worked at Lonester Steakhouse. There's not too many of them left anymore, if any. I worked an open to close shift one night by myself, had 2 tables, and made $12. I started a career elsewhere shortly after that, and 6 days after I left Lonester for the new position the restaurant closed. The employees weren't told either. They showed up, and the place was shut down by corporate already. Edit. Did some follow-up research. Last one in the US. Closed in October 2019. Still one running apparently in Guam of all places. Guess I'll have to plan a visit. Get me a Texas Rose. Second edit. The Lone Star Grill franchise in Canada is not the same as Lonester Steakhouse in America. Just found that out. I worked for a national camera store that went into administration. I was on my day off and found out via watching the news. Spent the rest of my day off job hunting. This was family-owned restaurant, not a chain, but I knew they were done for when I quit. In my entire time there I only remember feeling like it was really truly busy a couple times. More often than not we were slow or completely dead. The owner made some foolish decisions. He would frequently give the regulars free food and beer. It was also a microbrewery. Since I was just the P&D dishwasher, I was usually tasked with closing the kitchen solo, because me being there 3x as long when 2 people get it done in half the time makes total sense. Half the time, when the owner was bartending he would have me turn the deep fryer back on to make free shoot for his friends. Hooray for having to stay another hour, just to cost the owner money. There were people in the front of house and back of house dating. Drama always ensued. There were people that hated each other forced to work alongside each other. Poor direction from the top down. The owner would allow his wife to wait tables when she was high off her face on pills. Before I worked there she got a DUI and had her license revoked. When it was reinstated he bought her on credit a brand new $60K Mercedes. She totaled it while drunk roughly a week later. I had 2 paychecks bounce. Good wait stuff didn't stay. The morning crew for the kitchen trickled out over a few months. I quit in January 2008. It was closed by May. Not exactly a store, but I worked at a drive-in in high school. When the owner told me I could eat all the candy, hot dogs, and popcorn I wanted, I knew he was going out of business. In fairness to the owner, friends I've known receive similar permission egg mini donut stand operators have tended to take advantage of it for the first week. After that they barely tolerated seeing the product again and had no desire at all to partake of the freebies. I remember working at Blockbuster around 3 or 4 months before they shut our store down. My co-workers were all zany and gave zero fricks, all the way up to management, when the ship started going down. The interview process was such a joke because it involved 2 parts, a group interview and a one-on-one. The group portion involved us gathered around a bargain bin of movies, and each of us had to pretend to recommend one of the shooty movies in the pile, as if a customer would really be going through that garbage. Then in the one-on-one, they basically asked if you were comfortable working any holiday they asked, and if you didn't mind cleaning the toilets. The actual job was a joke. Because Blockbuster was bought by Dish Network, they assigned 1 or 2 of us to come in and try to sell cable services to innocent people who just wanted to rent the Lincoln Lawyer. I made 1 sale, and they never even ponied up the commission they promised. Instead, they let me keep a box of movies and games that I had stashed. Every employee had a safe spot for their box of the best stuff once they heard the store was closing. The managers had been through the ringer before informed us of the protocol. Towards the end, literally everything became available for sale. DVD racks, weird promo character cutouts, and the freezer for ice cream. Eventually it'd come in, eat a Slim Jim off the counter and drink a brisk iced tea, and wait for the hours to die. When the store closed, all of us had a bonfire where we burned all of the shoot that got left over. 10/10ths best college job ever. I got a job at Sears. I figured out they were definitely dying because I was getting a whopping 4 hours a week, 5 AM to 9 AM on Sunday mornings. Left me plenty of time to find a full-time job, and when I did find a decent job, I just stopped showing up to Sears. My manager called me asking if I really wanted to give up this job and that I needed to carefully consider my options. I told them that I has weighed my options, and my new job gave me 10 times the hours and nearly twice the pay. My owner started printing news articles about Netflix slowing down deliveries to folks who rented too much and posting them on our video store's entrance door. I worked at Blockbuster, but I quit a few years before they finally bit the dust. Probably we could tell that they were going under when they started chasing Netflix and copying them rather than trying to find a way to actually do something new. Of course, plenty of employees on I had a Blockbuster swore they saw it coming for years. Also, when nobody could get a decent manager to stay on, that was a pretty big red light. I worked there as well, and honestly thought they had something good going. Back when Netflix was still a DVD by mail service, Blockbuster had the perk of being able to rent any DVD online and return in store. You'd also get another rental for free immediately instead of waiting for the 2-way mail cycle. It seemed like the best of both worlds until streaming started taking over. Circuit City. All the talk is we might be going under. Management says don't worry, it was only the Midwestern stores. New England is fine. Week later I found out on the news, couple hours before my shift started, that I no longer had a job. They let us work another month to liquidate, but had no keys to the building and had to be escorted in and out. I currently work for iHeartMedia and currently living this. They just canned our local drive time sports guys. They replaced them with an annoying national shill who stole credit cards in college. Good luck selling divorce lawyers and boner pills and hair plugs, y'all. The hosts who got fired said on Twitter stuff like it wasn't a matter of if, but when, so hopefully they'll get back on their feet soon. Worked at Hastings in college, prior to them shutting down. Might be known on the coasts, but it was a bigger Midwest chain with movie rentals like Blockbuster, games, Magic the Gathering, books, crafts, RC planes, etc. They slammed like a Best Buy, Barnes & Noble, Blockbuster, and Hot Topic together basically. We got a new CEO, and at our staff meetings they would play a video from them once or twice a year. I remember him saying aggressive marketing and then talking about doubling the number of stores in a year's time. They even took one of our managers for this special promotional project where a bunch of the highest performing managers from around the country were brought to Texas to open a Hastings in 48 hours, which sounded like a nightmare. Anyways, they went tits up like 6 months after that. I had been doing a summer internship, so I just got a letter with a check for like $5. 60 as my company bankruptcy severance, or whatever. CompUSA. I was working in business sales and could just tell the company was on shaky ground. I started asking my customers about what was going on, and one complained about low-level tasks he had to do. I said I could do them. Sent him my resume and 12 plus years later I'm still in it. Eventually got his job too. I worked for Kodak in the mid 1990s. Digital photography was emerging, but emulsion chemical photography was already moving to minilabs, away from wholesale mass production. Management were always talking down digital and talking up our long-term future. Kodak even brought out a new film format in about 1995 with a magnetic strip on the film. High-tech mate. Among workers, most felt we were doomed, but equally most of the older people, and many had been there 20 or more years, seemed to think they'd be okay for a few more years. Our CEO used to come and give speeches about how we had a future as long as we did not seek pay rises. He later became CEO of Telstra, Australia's largest telecommunications company. There, he made expensive takeovers of White Pages, the paper phone directory, and Trading Post, a classified ad newspaper. This was with the internet already in common use. He later became head of NBN Co, the quasi-government company responsible for building the country's high-speed broadband network, a much criticized, mismanaged project noted for complacency and lethargy and a lack of ambition. There are some who want a nuclear power industry in Australia, and the man's name is often mentioned to head that. I worked for Walden Books for 5 years from 2005 to 2010. Walden Books was owned by Borders and had been systematically closing them over the years. We knew our store was on the chopping block because of our location. When the word finally came, it was not much of a surprise to us. We even got a severance package. What the shooty thing was, a year later Borders went under and many people went without their last 2 paychecks. I was thankful to get out when I did. It did not pay well, but I loved working with books and talking about books with people. It was by far my favorite job I have ever had, but boy was it financially painful. I worked at Qualix, Kodak, 1 Hour Photo, Blockbuster, Stephen Berry's, Caribou while they still exist, It's Only Just Barely, and Thief contracted a lot, Saturn, and a few others that no longer exist. Funnily enough, it was never on the downswing while I was there. Mostly, anyway. I should have companies pay me not to work there. I work at GameStop now. Hours are being cut, pay is very low and raises are little to none. Stock prices are in the gutter, holidays are not crazy busy and stores are filled with junk. We are being pressured to sell warranties like you wouldn't believe, because it's basically free money. People are being fired left and right for not selling enough of said warranties and memberships. Moral is in the dumpster. Our number one focus is getting people to trade in phones, not sell games, so the company can sell them to whomever. The list goes on and on. Not a store, but a .com. I knew we were doomed when management decided to buy a whole load of expensive IBM servers to host clients' websites, just as the national telcos were starting a hosting price war. Paying for those things plus RUNNING costs, which brought in $0 revenue, was a millstone too big for a 20-person company. We would have been fine if we just continued to deliver award-winning websites and digital media. My startup went under, but here were the signs. / their only work was busybody work assigned by bosses and not coming in from the queue / we missed payroll 1 week. We asked when we were getting shut down. They said everything was fine. Bosses had locked door meetings for 2 weeks and were cants to everyone during that time. Row reduction of force started 2 months after the first payroll miss. The company is now completely shuttered. My boss's CEO, CTO, HR manager were freaking idiots and had this wild ass plan of selling the company with no product or revenue. We tried pitching alternatives and driving revenue so that the company would succeed, and we were talked down to at every opportunity and told we know nothing about sales or running a successful company. I worked at Blockbuster Canada in 2009 and just got promoted to shift leader. That lasted just over a year. I got 3 promotion for mass selling our awards program to customers, which was a combination of free rentals and coupons for frequent visits. Another part of that was a monthly pass which would let you rent unlimited non-new releases as many times as you wanted, provided you returned the last movie. I think it was early 2010 when Netflix arrived in Canada, and I slowly lost some of my friends in neighboring stores due to closures. Our district manager told us to tell customers we were restructuring, and simultaneously made all employees take a mandatory course in graph training which would teach you how to sell better. This didn't help whatsoever, and it was a last-ditch effort to survive. Customers would rub Netflix in our faces. I don't blame them, as you could pay less and not leave the house to watch multiple movies. Also, the convenience of digital to physical media was a nail in the coffin for the company. On top of that, I got yelled at frequently by customers regarding our no late fees policy. They would get charged a restocking fee after a week and did have to explain this stupid mismarketing to them. In October of 2010 we received the letter that our store in Toronto would be closing in 3 months and would be best to seek alternative employment. I bought so many of our own stock of movies and games during our liquidation week and never looked back. I still loved the job and the people I met there. 10 free rentals a week and discounted purchases and food was great. Good times.